Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at 5 of the most disturbing sleepover murder cases.
Breaking news now at 5 o'clock out of Rockford. 4 people are dead, 5 others are hurt in a stabbing attack this afternoon in Rockford. Police say they have a man in custody.
They say young minds are full of potential, but sometimes they can also be full of chaos. In the city of Rockford, Christian Soto turned a regular day into a nightmare. It all started with a visit to his friend's house, but what came next was pure horror. Soto fatally stabbed his friend, then his friend's mother. But he didn't stop there. He ran over a postal worker, attacked an innocent family, and brutally assaulted 3 young girls, leaving 15-year-old Jenna A. Newcomb dead. This wasn't just violence, it was a rampage. But what drives a person to such madness? Let's dive into the disturbing story behind this mass murder in Rockford. The day was March 27, 2024. 22-year-old Christian Ivan Soto went to visit his childhood friend Jacob Schubach for what seemed like a casual hangout. They were just going to smoke at Jacob's house, something they had done countless times before. Smoking together wasn't new to them, and it wasn't Soto's first time by any means. It was a normal routine between friends. But on that day, something went terribly wrong. What exactly happened during that visit is still unclear. However, Soto would later claim that the joint they smoked had been laced with an unknown narcotic. And according to him, it was Jacob's doing. That's when things took a dark turn. Paranoia set in, and Soto's mind spiraled out of control. He became convinced that his friend had betrayed him by putting something in the weed. And then came the moment when everything snapped. In a fit of panic and confusion, Soto grabbed a knife from the kitchen and fatally stabbed Jacob. The scene was horrifying, but sadly, it didn't end there. Soto then turned his sights to Jacob's mother, 63-year-old Ramona. She too became a victim of his paranoia and rage as he fatally stabbed her to death. At this point, Jacob was still desperately trying to escape. Eyewitnesses reported seeing him running frantically across the street, with Soto hot on his heels. Soto was seen holding a black object, which he used to stab Jacob while he was down on the ground. Things took a terrifying turn when Soto jumped into his black Chevy Silverado, which was parked right in the driveway of 2316 Home Street. In a chilling display of brutality, Soto drove over Jacob with his truck. Despite the impact, Jacob managed to get up and make his way back into his house, barely clinging to life. But Soto wasn't done yet. He followed Jacob inside and brutally stabbed him multiple times before leaving the scene. He was only 23 with so much of life ahead of him. After leaving the Schubach home, Christian Soto's terrifying rampage was far from over. He drove his black Chevy Silverado to the 2200 block of Winnetka Lane, where he crossed paths with Jay Larson, a mail carrier who had been working in Rockford for 25 years. A witness living at 2217 Winnetka Lane was the first to spot the chaos. From inside his home, he heard a commotion outside and looked out to see Soto attacking Larson. The witness watched in shock as Soto, holding a black object, pounced on the mailman. Soto was punching Larson while he was lying on the grass near the front of the witness's house. Panicked, the witness opened his front door just as Larson yelled for help, pleading for someone to call the police. As the witness dialed 911, Soto moved toward his house, causing the witness to slam the door shut and lock it. He continued to watch the scene unfold through his window. According to him, Soto then went back to his black Chevy Silverado, which was parked nearby, and retrieved a knife with a bright orange handle. Armed with the knife, Soto returned to Larson and stabbed him multiple times, but the brutality didn't stop there. Soto got back into his truck, drove forward, and ran over Larson. The impact was so severe that it struck a nearby parked vehicle. Not satisfied, Soto reversed the truck and ran over Larson again. The witness saw Soto drive off, disappearing between the houses. The witness later went to the Rockford Police Department, where he was shown a lineup of photos. He confidently identified Soto as the attacker, confirming that it was Soto who had brutally assaulted and ran over Larson. And Soto didn't stop his reign of terror there. As police were dealing with the scene at Winnetka Lane, they received more 911 calls about a new attack at 4803 Cleveland Avenue. When officers arrived, they were greeted by Darlene, her son Jacob, and her daughter Kathy. They reported that Soto had burst into their home armed with a katana-style knife. Darlene had just opened her door to let their dog outside when Soto appeared at the doorway. Without warning, he violently stabbed Darlene on the left side of her face near her eye. Once Soto burst into the house, he wasted no time unleashing chaos. Jacob and Kathy, caught off guard, bravely tried to defend themselves from his relentless assault. Soto's attack was brutal. Kathy took a sharp stab to the lower left side of her chin, leaving her in severe pain. Jacob wasn't any luckier. He got slashed across his forehead and inside his left ear. He couldn't even tell if these wounds were from the knife or from Soto's furious punches. In a desperate effort to fend off their attacker, Jacob grabbed a syrup bottle and swung it at Soto. The blows seemed to catch Soto off guard, causing him to quickly retreat from the house. Darlene, Jacob, and Kathy were rushed to the hospital as soon as possible. Fortunately, their injuries, though serious, weren't life-threatening. After receiving prompt medical attention, they were treated and released, thankfully safe but shaken from the terrifying ordeal. Later, when questioned by the police, Soto admitted to attacking the residents with a knife. He even recalled that while he was in the house, the family's pit bull had bitten him on the leg. After his rampage at Darlene's home, Soto fled on foot. As the police and emergency services scrambled to address the numerous crime scenes, they were flagged down about another incident at 4715 Cleveland Avenue. There, officers discovered another grim scene. 2 injured teenage girls, who we will be calling Sheila and Kia for their privacy, and a deceased girl named Jenna, found in the basement. Jenna's body bore evident signs of severe trauma. Sheila, who was rushed to the hospital, had suffered a serious fracture, numerous lacerations to her head, and significant bruising on the left side of her torso. Kia, on the other hand, had several bruises on her left shoulder, arm, and leg. The extent of their injuries underscored the brutal and relentless nature of Soto's attack that day. Detectives spoke with Kia, who had been spending the night at her friend Jenna's house. The 2 friends were enjoying a movie in the basement, huddled around a laptop in Jenna's cozy bedroom. Meanwhile, Sheila, Jenna's sister, was upstairs. She had come downstairs to warn the others that an intruder had broken into the house. The intruder didn't waste any time. Armed with Jenna's softball bat, he stormed into the basement where the girls were. According to Kia, the suspect, drenched in blood, stormed into the room and started shouting at the girls, demanding to know where the gun was. Terrified, the girls scrambled into a corner of the bedroom, trying to hide from the crazed intruder. He didn't hesitate and began swinging the bat violently. Kia, who was curled up in a fetal position on the floor, wasn't spared and was struck on her left side despite her attempts to shield herself. Jenna, who was also hit multiple times, eventually collapsed from the blows. The attacker continued his rampage until he abruptly stopped and fled the house, leaving behind a scene of chaos and horror. Still in shock, Kia dashed outside and flagged down the officers who had arrived. She described the attacker as a man in his mid-20s with tan skin and black hair styled in a bowl cut. He was wearing a beige hoodie and blue jeans and stood about 5 feet tall, a bit taller than her. Kia also mentioned that he was skinny and completely covered in blood when she first saw him. Detectives also interviewed Sheila, who shared a chilling account of the attack. Sheila had been in the kitchen preparing a snack when the suspect burst in through an unlocked rear door. The intruder quickly grabbed one of Jenna's softball bats and began aimlessly wandering around the first floor. Sheila, realizing the danger, rushed downstairs to warn Kia and her sister Jenna. As Sheila reached the basement, the attacker followed, swinging the bat with reckless force. Jenna was struck repeatedly and soon lost consciousness from the brutal blows. The intruder then ominously declared, "I'm going to get a gun. before heading back upstairs. The girls, terrified and helpless, could hear him moving around upstairs. In the midst of the chaos, Kia managed to call the police, her voice trembling with fear. Later, Sheila and Jenna's mother bravely came forward with a heartbreaking revelation. She shared that Jenna had fought to protect her sister during the attack, a tragic fact that made the situation even more sorrowful. Jenna was just about to turn 16 this year, a time when she should have been celebrating her youth and future. Following the horrific attack at Jenna's house, Soto continued his rampage. He smashed a window at a home on the 4600 block of Florence Street and entered the house with a knife. Inside, he began attacking a woman. Fortunately, the woman managed to escape, fleeing on foot to a front yard located on the 2100 block of Eggleston Road. Soto pursued her relentlessly, continuing his brutal assault. In a desperate bid to help the woman, a man driving a gray Jeep stopped at the scene. Tragically, he was also attacked by Soto and suffered multiple stab wounds. It was at this point, around 1:35 in the afternoon, that the police finally managed to take Soto into custody. In a dramatic turn of events, Soto, covered in blood and clearly exhausted from his violent spree, dropped the knife right at the woman's feet as officers closed in on him. The gravity of the situation was apparent as both the woman and the man who had tried to help her were left with serious injuries. The woman, whose condition was particularly dire, was immediately rushed to the hospital. Her injuries were so severe that she had to be intubated to help her breathe.
The young lady ran from him. She got some stab wounds in her hands and her face. She's currently at a hospital, and she is intubated. She is in serious condition. One of the Good Samaritans stopped to help her out. He did get some stab wounds. He's fine.
And when Soto was apprehended by the police, he was still wearing the gray sweatshirt and blue jeans, and he was covered in blood. His hands had minor cuts, and he was taken to the hospital for treatment before being released. After being read his Miranda rights, Soto confessed to attacking and stabbing a mailman. He explained that he had fled from that scene upon seeing the police and ended up at a house with a garage where he saw a motorcycle. Soto entered through the unlocked back door of this house, which was located at 4715 Cleveland Avenue. Inside, he found a bat in the kitchen. Soto remembered using the bat to attack the 3 kids he found in the basement. The bat, covered in blood, was later discovered in the upstairs bedroom. This forms part of the city's complaint against Soto. At this point, it's glaringly obvious that this attack is not just brutal, but deeply disturbing and profoundly tragic. 4 people were killed, and there are 7 people who are injured. The sheer scale of violence unleashed by Soto paints a horrifying picture, and it's evident that this incident is more than just a moment of chaos. It's a heartbreaking tragedy. What adds another layer of unease is the fact that Soto isn't a stranger to criminal activity. He lives on Upland Drive, a street alarmingly close to where the stabbings occurred. Soto's criminal record, while not extensive, includes a felony arrest from 2020 for criminal damage to property at a local forest preserve. Additionally, he had some minor traffic offenses. However, despite these run-ins with the law, there was nothing in his past to suggest he was capable of such extreme violence. Authorities were taken aback by the sudden and extreme shift in Soto's behavior. No matter what personal traumas or problems Soto might have faced, nothing could justify the utter chaos he brought upon others. And despite the limited information available online about Soto, a Facebook post has offered some insight into his past. Vincent Cruz, a social media user, revealed that he went to Rockford East High School with Soto and graduated from Rock Valley College. At the time of the attacks, Soto was employed at a clothing store called Hollister. In a heartfelt Facebook post, Cruz expressed his disbelief and sadness over the situation. He wrote, "I literally went to school with this guy. Like, what the heck? How could you do that? Someone who was so nice, Jacob, aka Baca, wouldn't hurt a fly, and you do this to him? It's wild. I just don't get this world. Rest in peace, Baca. We will never forget you, my guy. Now remember when Soto claimed that Jacob had put something in their joint? Well, initial urine tests have come back negative for any substances. This means that the tests didn't find any drugs or unusual chemicals in Jacob's system. And according to the investigation, Soto is mentally fit to stand for trial. Going forward, Soto now faces an extensive list of charges. He is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 2 counts of home invasion. This array of charges reflects the severe nature of his crimes. All of the people hope that Soto will receive a punishment that matches the suffering he inflicted on his victims. If Soto is convicted, he could face up to 60 years in prison for each count of first-degree murder and attempted murder. For each count of home invasion, he could be sentenced to up to 30 years. Moreover, there's a possibility of federal charges being added to his case because one of his victims was a postal worker. This could lead to even more severe penalties and extend his time in prison, and that is well-deserved. The courtroom drama escalated on April 2nd when Soto made headlines again with a shocking outburst during his hearing. In a surprising and emotional display, Soto shouted, "Only God can judge me," and referred to the people in the courtroom as puppets and serpents.
Soto, appearing in an orange prison uniform, wearing restraints around his waist, stood next to his public defender and shouted at Judge Scott Paganini a number of times, saying, "You're a puppet, you're from the devil, and only God can judge me."
The case has drawn widespread attention and sparked a range of reactions from those affected and the general public. Rockford Mayor Tom McNamara has been a vocal figure in the aftermath, emphasizing the need for communal healing. According to the mayor, Jenna's mother wants everyone to know this.
Jenna died saving her sister and her friend and protecting them from further harm.
Jay Larson, a beloved postal worker who had dedicated over 20 years to serving the Rockford community, has also been remembered with great respect. Ruth Mendoza, an inspector in charge with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, praised Larson's commitment. Jay was doing what he loved, delivering mail to the customers he had served for 25 years. His dedication to his job and his community made his loss deeply felt among those who knew him. President Joe Biden has also weighed in on the tragedy, expressing his horror and sympathy. In a statement released by the White House, Biden extended his prayers to the families of the victims and wished for the full recovery of those injured. He also commended the local law enforcement for their heroic actions, saying, "We are grateful for the heroic actions of local law enforcement, who confronted the suspect and prevented the loss of more innocent lives." This situation is especially heartbreaking for the community, coming as it does so soon after another violent incident. Just days before the stabbing spree, Rockford experienced a tragic knife attack at a Walmart, where an 18-year-old employee lost his life. Timothy Carter, a 28-year-old from Rockford, has been charged with first-degree murder in connection with this tragic event. To make matters worse, recent months have seen a troubling number of similar incidents involving young people across the United States. One particularly shocking case occurred at Appalachia High School in Georgia, where a 14-year-old boy was charged with killing 4 people. The suspect, Colt Gray, faces multiple murder charges and is being tried as an adult due to the severity of the crimes. In another disturbing event, a 15-year-old was involved in a mass shooting in Raleigh, North Carolina, which resulted in the deaths of 5 people, including an off-duty police officer. The community is grappling with these shocking events, which serve as a stark reminder of the urgent need for comprehensive strategies to address and prevent violence among young people. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or distressed, it's important to remember that turning to drugs will only make things worse. Instead of escaping into substances, seek out healthier ways to cope and find support. If you ever feel unsafe or in danger, don't hesitate to reach out for help. There are people and resources ready to support you in difficult times. The world can indeed feel intimidating and overwhelming, but remember, you don't have to face it alone. There are limits to what one person can handle on their own, and asking for help is a strong and courageous step.
Yeah, well, I've murdered 4 people.
What happens when the systems you trust let a violent criminal roam freely? And what happens when you invite this criminal into your home, near your children? In today's case, we'll look at how the monster known as Damien Bendall was created, emboldened, and let loose due to the incompetence of the authorities we trust to keep us safe. This is a story of a ticking time bomb who ultimately took the lives of 4 innocent souls in the most inhumane way possible. As we uncover the details of this case, you will be shocked to see just how preventable it all could have been. Let's get started. Damien Bendall was born on the 6th of January 1990 in Swindon, a town in Wiltshire, England. Right from the get-go, Bendall's family life was chaotic. He grew up regularly witnessing fighting, drug use, and people breaking the law. Instead of being ashamed of this, Bendall actually felt proud. He would brag to his peers about how many times his family members had been in jail. According to his own account, he started selling drugs at the age of 9. A source from his hometown said Bendall's criminal acts were all part of a stated intention to emulate a bad boy relative he looked up to. The source claimed he always wanted to be like his relative, but always fell short because the relative was far worse. He was open about it and would say he wanted to be a bad boy. A neighbor who also knew him growing up described Bendall as a fantasist who boasted of hanging around with gangsters in South London. As Bendall got older, he started causing trouble in his neighborhood. In 2004, at age 13, he was reprimanded for criminal damage after throwing an egg at a woman's house. From there, he would try to escalate his violence to a sickening level. Bendall was known for hurting animals. Locals said he especially took pleasure in torturing kittens. Research has consistently reported childhood cruelty to animals as the first warning sign of later delinquency, violence, and criminal behavior. In fact, nearly all violent crime perpetrators have a history of animal cruelty in their profiles. It's definitely a red flag to look out for. Not only that, but Bendall would viciously attack the racial minorities in his community. He claimed he was a high-ranking member of a white supremacist group called the Aryan Brotherhood. According to him, he had carried out several hate crimes for which he was never convicted. He reported having 2 Nazi-inspired tattoos as well. But the issue here is that there is no evidence he has ever been a part of this group. His probation officers would even go on to mention that he had a habit of telling people grandiose stories about himself. This habitual pathological lying is another major red flag from Bendall's early life. Another big problem in Bendall's life was drugs. He started using cocaine and heroin when he was a teenager, which gave him the push to start committing crimes for the money to afford his habit. On April 20th, 2010, the police found cocaine on him and gave him a warning. But this didn't stop him. Just a few weeks later, on June 3, 2010, Bendall attacked an Asian man who was walking alone on the street. When the man tried to defend himself, Bendall mercilessly beat him up and stole his things. According to a report, this beating had left the man unconscious. The level of force he used was described as excessive and beyond what was needed to simply rob him. Bendall was just enjoying being extremely violent. The victim remembered Bendall saying racist things while hitting him over and over again before he passed out. Bendall was arrested, and on June 30th, 2011, he was sent to prison for 3 years. Unsurprisingly, this wouldn't be the last time Bendall ends up behind bars. After getting out of prison in August 2012, Bendall seemed to stay out of trouble with the police for a while. But this doesn't mean he had changed for good. We now know that during this time he had started abusing a woman. During their time together, she was too afraid to tell anyone about what she was suffering because she thought Bendall might kill her if he found out. But he couldn't stay out of trouble for long. On June 7, 2015, he went into a news shop in Swindon run by a 62-year-old man named Narendra Patel. Narendra remembered Bendel acting strange, walking back and forth in the shop and looking out the window a lot. Bendel made some phone calls and bought some cold drinks. Suddenly, he flashed a 6-inch knife at the counter and demanded the victim give him money and cigarettes. Fortunately, Narendra had a golf club behind the counter for protection, and he tried to hit Bendel with it. But Bendel ducked and then ran away. The police started looking for Bendel, but he turned himself in before they could catch him. On August 21, 2015, he was sent to prison again for 3 more years. While in prison, Bendel's violent behavior got even worse. In early 2016, his request to move to a different prison was rejected. This made him so angry that for months he planned how to get back at the prison staff. On May 10, 2016, he attacked a prison officer so badly that he was knocked out and had to have surgery. 2 other officers who tried to help were also hurt by Bendel's uncontrollable fury. While he was in prison, his ex-partner told the probation service about how dangerous he was. She made a request for him to be prevented from contacting her and asked to know his release date and whether she could obtain a restraining order. 2 days after this, her new partner also contacted probation services and said that more should be done to protect her. The victim was terrorized by the thought that he would come after her when he got out. Bendel was let out of prison on October 31, 2018. But he behaved poorly and didn't follow the terms of his release. He drank alcohol on the approved premises where he was staying, missed curfew, and didn't do what he was told. So, on November 28, 2018, he was sent back to prison. He stayed there until August 9, 2019, when he was released again without probation supervision. During this time, he hinted to his probation officer that he met a woman he wanted to live with at the end of his sentence. The worst was yet to come. After Bendel got out of prison again, his deviance only grew worse. He grew a sexual interest in children. In May 2020, the police in Wiltshire were told that Bendel was trying to get close to a 16-year-old girl who was in foster care. The police wanted to warn him to keep away from the teenager, but he had escaped by then. He had allegedly moved on, trying to start sexual relationships with even younger girls who were in similar situations. The police feared Bendel could start abusing them, so he was classified as high risk. The police told the probation service about this, but later on, this information wasn't used when it should have been. This gross negligence from the probation service was widely condemned later. For now, this shows how dangerous people like Bendel can be. A lifetime of guiltlessly lying makes them experts at manipulation. With women, Bendel would draw them in by making them feel special, but later show how terrifying he really was. By then, it was often too late, as the women were under his control and too scared to leave. This is how Bendel started a relationship with Terry Harris, a 35-year-old single mother of 2. They met on a dating website in March 2020. Terry had just broken up with her partner of 14 years, Jason Bennett. Jason was the father of Terry's 2 children, Lacey, who was 11 years old, and John Paul, 13 years old. Terry really liked Bendel, and after only a few months, they started living together in a house in Killamarsh, a village near Sheffield. But, as psychopaths often do, Bendel had 2 ulterior motives for moving in with Terry. First, he could be closer to her and control her more easily. Second, he could avoid the police because they were looking for him. This was because a few months after they met, he set fire to a car he was trying to steal in Swindon while drunk and high on cannabis. Terry, who was unaware of this, really liked Bendel, but her friends and family were worried. Bendel liked to brag about his criminal past and that he was running from the police. A friend of Terry described how Bendel was acting erratically and appeared pumped up, as if he was looking for trouble. Bendel smoked a lot of cannabis, and according to those who knew him, he had 2 different personalities, depending on whether he had taken drugs. He would brag about fighting with people, and talked about how he was a boxer and boasted about the times he had been in jail. In July 2020, Bendel told Terry's mother about a friend's dog who hadn't been well. His friend couldn't afford to take it to the vet, so he had taken a brick and killed the dog by hitting it around the head. When Bendel walked out, Terry had showed her mother his knuckle duster. He also leeched off Terry as he had no interest in working and spent what little money he had on alcohol and drugs. Terry's mother, Angie Smith, thought Bendel was controlling her daughter. She saw that Terry always seemed nervous around Bendel, like she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Angie said, "She's always been a tomboy, but when she started going with him, it was always tight shorts and low-cut tops. Her hair became bright red. It was as if he was parading her around." Bendel was also stopping Terry from seeing her mom and friends. Angie begged Terry to leave Bendel, but she was in love with him. Terry got pregnant early in the relationship and was very happy about it. But the idea of becoming a father didn't make Bendel's behavior any better. Instead, his behavior grew worse and more abusive. He became very jealous and baselessly accused Terry of cheating on him constantly. Bendel was so irrationally angry that even neighbors could hear his shouting and abuse. Unable to take this awful treatment any longer, Terry began her first steps to get away from Bendel. That's when the situation reached its worst point. In May 2021, the police finally caught up with Bendel. They arrested him for the arson he had committed the year before, and he was taken to court. On the 9th of June, 2021, Bendel was given a suspended prison sentence and a curfew. This meant he didn't have to go to prison right away, but he had to follow certain rules. Shockingly, this abusive man was allowed to go back and live with Terry and her children. Just 3 months later, one of the most horrific crimes in Britain took place.
This was a deeply concerning and appalling case. We found that at every stage of Damien Bendel's supervision by the probation service, from his initial court report to his supervision in the community, the quality of that work was wholly inadequate and far below what was required and what the public have every right to expect, I think. We found both failings amongst individual practice by probation staff and by their line managers, but they reflected a broader issue in the probation service, that they are struggling to properly assess and manage the risks of harm that people on probation may present to the public and to children and to potential partners.
Late in the evening of September 18, 2021, Bendel was in the house with Terry and her 2 children, John Paul and Lacey. The children were getting ready for bed. Sadly, there was another child there too. Lacey's best friend, 11-year-old Connie Gent, who had come over for a sleepover. Bendel later said he had been using cocaine for 3 days by this point and was looking to buy more cocaine. We don't know the exact events that led to this, but Bendel took a claw hammer and attacked all 4 people in the house. He brutally hit each person in the head several times with such violence and ferocity that their skulls were smashed in. Each person died in a different room, which shows that when the attack started, everyone ran to try to save themselves. Bendel went from room to room looking for them. There was blood all over the house. What Bendel did next is almost too horrible to believe. After beating 11-year-old Lacey until she was almost dead, he took her into the bedroom where her pregnant mother's body was and molested her. The doctor who examined the bodies later said that Lacey was assaulted after she'd been attacked and while she was dying from her terrible head injuries. After he was done, he applied pressure on her neck to kill her. The last moments of her young life were spent in unbearable agony. After this, Bendel sat with the bodies for several hours. He didn't try to clean up the house at all, but he did change his clothes multiple times. Later, he was seen on camera carrying a bag with John Paul's Xbox game console in it. He took a taxi and traded this game console for cocaine. He was also seen going into a corner shop, where he didn't look upset or worried at all. Remember, this is a man who had just killed 4 people. Their bodies were still lying where he had left them. On his way back, he had told a taxi driver he had been chilling with the family. This is a level of psychopathy that can leave one speechless in horror. About 12 hours after the murders, Bendel finally called the police. He did this so he could tell his version of the story first and try to control the narrative.
Basically, I need the police and the ambulance and that because I've killed 4 people.
Okay, just hold the line.
Bendall also made a weak attempt to self-harm by stabbing himself. He tried to make it look like he was so upset by what he'd done that he tried to end his own life, but it only left superficial stab wounds on his chest and abdomen.
I don't know what happened. Alright, come to me. Right. Mate, have you got anything on you that you shouldn't have? No, there's no weapons or nothing.
Right, do you just want to undo your coat? Have you armed yourself?
Yeah.
He was calm and totally relaxed during the questioning.
Anyone else? Yeah. What have you done? I've murdered 4 people.
He told the officers, "The whole house is covered in blood. I used a hammer. I didn't realize what I'd done. I've murdered 4 people. I don't know why. I blacked out. It was as if I was outside my body." He also made sure to tell them that he'd been using a lot of drugs for the past few days and was so high that he couldn't remember anything. But even while trying to make excuses, this cruel and evil man couldn't help but brag about what he'd done. He said to the officers, "I bet you don't get 4 murders in Killamarsh, do you?" After his arrest, Bendall was charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of rape. He tried several tactics to avoid the full consequences of his actions. First, he claimed he was so high on drugs that he couldn't remember killing anyone. He also refused to admit that he had assaulted Lacey. This was probably because he knew how child sex offenders are treated in prison. Bendall offered to plead guilty to manslaughter. This would mean admitting he killed all 4 victims, but saying he didn't plan to do it. The court rejected this offer. It was easy to prove that Bendall was lying. He said he couldn't remember the killings, but he was able to take the game console, go into town, and buy drugs. He also waited many hours before calling for help. When the police arrived, he was calm and detached, acting like he had done something minor. On December 21, 2021, at Derby Crown Court, Bendall knew he couldn't keep lying. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and 1 count of rape. That same afternoon, he stood before Mr. Justice Sweeney KC to be sentenced. In a last attempt to get sympathy, Bendall's lawyer said that Bendall was now sorry for what he had done. The judge didn't believe this. In his sentencing remarks, the judge said the murders were brutal, vicious, and cruel. He pointed out that Bendall had killed defenseless children and a woman he claimed to have loved, who was pregnant with his child. Then the judge gave Bendall his sentence. For the murder and rape of 11-year-old Lacey, and for the murders of 13-year-old John Paul, 11-year-old Connie, and 35-year-old Terry, Bendall was given a whole life order. This means he will never be released from prison. Unfortunately, the probation officer who wrote Bendall's report didn't do their job properly. They only listened to what Bendall said, even though Bendall was good at manipulating people and was very dangerous. Instead of checking with anyone else or looking at Bendall's long history of crimes, the officers simply believed his lies. If they had done their due diligence, they would have seen how violent he had been, both in and out of prison. They would have seen warnings about how he treated his partners and that people were worried he might hurt children. Because they didn't do this, they told the court that they thought Bendall wasn't likely to seriously hurt partners or children. They also said Bendall shouldn't go to prison. Instead, they suggested he should have to stay at home with Terry during certain hours, usually at night. He would wear an ankle bracelet to make sure he followed this rule. In a scathing indictment of the state of the service, Peter Nito, the senior coroner for Derby and Derbyshire, said the victims had been failed by overworked, stressed, and inexperienced probation officers. Bendall's case was managed by 2 trainee probation officers with just months of experience between them, and who did not have the experience, qualifications, or training to manage the case, while managers failed to properly supervise. Recording his conclusion for all 4 inquests after hearing 2 weeks of evidence, Mr. Nieto said they were unlawfully killed, but their deaths were contributed to by acts or omissions by the designated state agency for offending management in the course of Damien Bendall's offender supervision and management. The probation service accepted a staggering 51 separate failings at the inquests held at Chesterfield Coroner's Court and accepted a catalog of missed opportunities and lack of scrutiny concerning Bendall's supervision going back several years. A review found failings at every stage. We'll never know what would have happened if the report had been different. The judge might still have decided not to send Bendall to prison. But the information given to the judge was so wrong that it was careless and dangerous. Angie Smith, Terry's mother, spoke about her overwhelming grief. She lost not only her daughter, her only child, but also her grandchildren. Angie talks about how precious her daughter and grandchildren were to her, and how she would give anything to spend just one more moment with them. Jason Bennett, the father of John Paul and Lacey, said that the murder of his 2 children has destroyed his life. He feels that life now seems pointless, and it's painful to think about the future. He sometimes gets distracted by thoughts of how his children died, reliving the trauma in his mind. Charlie Gent, Connie's father, spoke just 9 days after his daughter was murdered. He described Connie as his best friend, someone who could always make him smile. Charlie also talked about the last day he spent with Connie, saying he remembers how good it felt to hold her and how safe she made him feel. He wanted to be interviewed to urge other parents to value their time with their children, because you never know when it might be the last.
Just a basic PNC check, then, you know, maybe they'd all still be here today. It could have quite easily been prevented. I think the entire system's broken, really broken.
The lingering question is, why did Bendall commit these horrifying murders? Much to the family's dismay, he never explained his motives clearly. Some speculate that it was due to his apprehension on becoming a father, while others say he was abusing Lacey and wanted to keep her quiet. Could drugs be reason enough to lose control like this? Or was this plain psychopathic rage? Another question is whether this was preventable. Could a proper intervention from authorities have potentially saved their lives? What else can be done to reform the system?
At every stage of probation supervision of Damien Bendall, from assessment to the court report to his supervision in the community, the quality of that work by probation was of an unacceptable standard and well below what was required and what the public, I think, have a right to expect.
Jealousy can be a dangerous thing, and sometimes it turns deadly. In fact, studies show that nearly 40% of murders are fueled by jealousy. It can come from a partner, a friend, family, or even a stranger. But what happens when the people closest to you reveal their darkest sides? For 14-year-old Amelia Sjöberg from Sweden, this nightmare became all too real. After getting permission for what was supposed to be a fun pajama party, she was lured to an industrial site and brutally murdered. The most disturbing part? The attack was filmed and shared online by her own so-called friends. What could drive such young girls to commit such a horrific act? By the end of this video, you might start to wonder how well you really know the people you trust. Let's get started. Before we dive into the tragic events, let's take a closer look at who Amelia Sjöberg really was. At just 14 years old, Amelia was a bright and hopeful girl from Landskrona, southern Sweden. Despite her young age, she had a maturity and resilience that shined through. But her upbringing wasn't easy. She was placed in foster care at a young age, and like any child in that situation, Amelia longed for a real family, a place where she felt safe and loved. It was a dream her mother, Anna Sjöberg, worked tirelessly to make come true, even though their lives were far from simple. Anna, who became a mother at 19, did everything she could to give Amelia the stable, loving home she never had growing up. Anna had experienced her own struggles as a child, and she was determined to create a better life for her daughter. Amelia didn't let her tough background hold her back, though. She was full of life and energy, especially when it came to social media. TikTok, in particular, was where she expressed herself. Her videos were filled with creativity, spreading messages of friendship, kindness, and support. She connected with people from all over the world, sharing her youthful spirit. But Amelia wasn't the only one who loved to share her life with the world. Her mother, Anna, was just as proud and eager to celebrate her daughter's beauty and spirit. One example of this was when Anna posted a video of Amelia's 13th birthday, capturing the special moments and showcasing just how much she adored her daughter. In an interview, her mother also remembers Amelia's kindness, like when she was just 2 years old and decided to send her pacifiers to children in Africa. Even at such a young age, she had a heart full of compassion. But of course, like any teenager, Amelia had her fair share of challenges, especially when it came to her social life. Reports from local media and police suggest that she had a falling out with others at a youth home she once stayed at, which may have played a role in the events that followed. Though the details of what happened aren't entirely clear, what we do know is that Amelia remained optimistic, always looking forward to the little things that brought her joy. One of those things was the pajama party she was so excited about attending, a party that heartbreakingly she never made it to. According to her mother, Amelia asked for permission to attend a pajama party on July 21st of 2024. Excited for a fun night, she set out with what she thought were her friends. But instead of heading to a sleepover, 2 of these friends lured her to a remote industrial area near the Landskrona railway station, pretending it was part of the party plans. After all, they were her friends. What could possibly go wrong? Unfortunately, Amelia had no idea that her friends had a dark and sinister plan. Documents from the local court indicate that Amelia was likely killed sometime between July 21st and July 22nd. Her body was discovered shortly after midnight on Tuesday, July 23rd, and after Amelia was discovered, she was immediately rushed to the hospital in a desperate attempt to save her life. Doctors and medical staff fought hard to keep her alive, but despite their best efforts, her injuries were too severe. Tragically, Amelia succumbed to her wounds and was pronounced dead not long after arriving. The condition of her body made it clear this was no random accident. Chief Investigator Kent Pearson reported that Amelia's body displayed signs of severe violence. Although the exact cause of death was initially withheld, it was later revealed that she had multiple stab wounds on her neck. Shockingly, silver tape had also been found, suggesting that Amelia had been physically restrained during the attack. Prosecutor Thomas Olvmere noted that the injuries and circumstances strongly suggest that Amelia's life was taken intentionally and she was deprived of her freedom before her death. What makes this case even more disturbing is that the 2 girls who committed this horrifying act were minors themselves, just 13 and 15 years old. Their actions are nothing short of chilling, and it's almost impossible to think how such young individuals could be involved in something so brutal. Initially, many people on social media believed that Amelia's murder was racially motivated. However, both the media and the police have stayed silent about the possible motives behind the crime, waiting for the investigation to reveal more details. What investigators couldn't ignore, though, was the speed at which recordings of the incident began to spread online, forcing them to act quickly. The video itself is truly horrifying. The fact that the 2 girls not only had the time but the presence of mind to record the brutal act is unbelievable. However, these recordings have played a crucial role in identifying the perpetrators. It became clear from the footage that the crime was most likely committed by 2 teenagers who had posed as Amelia's friends. According to reports from Swedish media, Amelia had a confrontation with one of the girls just before her death. Shortly after, the 13 and 15-year-old girls fatally wounded her. Interestingly, after the crime, these teenagers reportedly bragged about what they had done in a group chat. They even shared the horrifying recordings of the attack. These videos will undoubtedly serve as key evidence in the case, directly incriminating the young girls involved. and when the two were arrested, one of the girls reportedly admitted to her role in the crime. The prosecutor mentioned that this girl provided details about what led to the tragic incident. Her lawyer even confirmed that her client had spoken to the police, and both girls made certain admissions during the investigation. As for the motive, it appears the brutal murder stemmed from something as petty as a fight over an insult. Swedish newspaper Expressen reports that the dispute escalated over jealousy. And this was backed up by Amelia's mother, who also claimed that her daughter was killed because of a boy. One of the suspects told police that they never intended to kill Amelia and that things just got out of hand. However, the Swedish media also uncovered disturbing evidence suggesting the girls had prepared for the attack. They reportedly stole silver tape and a knife from local stores, indicating that the encounter might have been more premeditated than the suspects initially claimed. The 15-year-old who was the first to be arrested had been staying in the same youth home where Amelia lived before the attack. She remains in custody while the younger girl, age 13, has been placed in the care of social services. In the days following the murder, local police and the Coast Guard searched the harbor near the industrial site where Amelia's body was found. 2 days before, a bag containing her bank cards and other belongings was discovered in the water, but the authorities haven't revealed what they were searching for during the harbor investigation. Later that day, Chief Investigator Persson shared that police had discovered a knife near the crime scene, which they suspect could be the murder weapon. A second knife was also found and taken as evidence, though authorities haven't confirmed the exact weapon used in Amelia's death. This case is still developing, and it's clear there's a lot more to come as new details emerge. When it comes to the suspects, everyone in the community is hoping they'll be tried as adults. What they did is so brutal that it's hard to believe even an adult could commit such a crime. Sadly, cases like this aren't isolated. In recent years, there's been an alarming rise in young people being involved in serious crimes. Sometimes the cause is something as small as jealousy. One of the most heartbreaking cases similar to this is that of 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, who was murdered by her classmate, a classmate she likely trusted. Just like Amelia, Tristan had her whole life ahead of her. She was a bright young cheerleader, full of energy and potential, but that was all tragically cut short in May 2021. Tristan was brutally stabbed and slashed multiple times. Aiden Fucci, who was only 14 at the time, was arrested for her murder. This case shook the nation, not just for the horror of the crime, but because both the victim and the perpetrator were so young. Fucci, who lived near Tristan and went to the same school, was known to talk about killing people. His friends said he once even planned to drag someone into the woods and stab them. While Fucci didn't have a criminal record, his disturbing behavior was noticed by others. On the night Tristan died, Fucci reportedly convinced her to leave her house and meet him. They were seen on a video walking together near where her body was later found. A little over an hour later, Fucci was seen walking back, alone, with his shoes in his hands. Tristan's autopsy revealed she had been stabbed 114 times, with 49 of those being defensive wounds, showing how hard she fought back. It's heartbreaking, especially considering how young she was and how much life she had ahead of her. And while Tristan was still missing, Aiden Fucci posted a selfie on Snapchat from the back of a police car, holding up a peace sign with the message, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" Someone even replied, "You were with her, Aiden." You know what happened. As the investigation went on, a buck knife with a broken tip was found in a pond near Tristan's body. That missing tip was lodged in her scalp, and the knife was identified as Fucci's. There was video and DNA evidence, along with blood-stained clothes and shoes found at his house. Investigators even found a knife sheath and a notebook filled with violent drawings. What makes things worse is how some parents fail to step up. Instead of helping police, Fucci's own mother, Crystal Lane Smith, was caught on video trying to clean a pair of bloody jeans after the murder. The next day, in a recorded room at the police station, she asked Fucci if he was sure there was nothing on his clothes from the night before. When he said, "I don't think so. Why?" She whispered, "Blood."
You sure it's not on
Crystal Smith was arrested for tampering with evidence, which just shows how deep this tragedy goes. It's a chilling example of how misguided actions can make an already horrific situation even worse. The rise in teen violence, especially crimes as brutal as this, is hard to wrap our heads around. We often search for reasons, but beyond individual motives, there's a bigger question. What's happening with young people today? Why are we seeing more and more teens desensitized to such extreme violence? It's something we urgently need to understand and address. In a recent interview, Matt Henson, the attorney who represented the Bailey family, took a deep dive into the chilling similarities between Amelia's case and the Tristan Bailey case. He pointed out a troubling trend we're seeing not just in the U.S., but globally, an increase in violent acts committed by young people. Henson talked about how often young perpetrators aren't sophisticated enough to cover up their crimes. They tend to be caught quickly because they lack the experience and maturity to evade detection. In most cases, they're arrested and face prosecution unless they strike some sort of deal. This is especially true for minors whose brains aren't fully developed, making it hard for them to plan out a complex crime. He emphasized that while understanding their motives is crucial, proving who did it is usually straightforward because these youths often leave clear evidence of their actions. The key issue, he argues, is not just the crime itself, but what drives these young people to commit such heinous acts. It seems many of them don't fully grasp the consequences of their actions or the punishments they might face. This misunderstanding might lead them to believe they can get away with it.
These children, it appears, don't quite understand or comprehend or are able to get the idea that there's a punishment behind this. I think a lot of times they think they're going to get away with it. They plan it out. They think they're going to, but...
He also mentioned the sloppiness often seen in these cases. For instance, in Amelia's case, investigators found a knife near the crime scene and a bag with Amelia's belongings in the water, indicating a poorly executed attempt to dispose of evidence. Sometimes minors get help from adults, and there's a report that an adult is being questioned in connection with this case. While it's not clear what role this adult might have played, Henson pointed out that adults often get involved, either by assisting or by trying to cover up the crime, as seen in Tristan Bailey's case with Aiden Fucci. He also drew a comparison to the Slender Man stabbing case from about a decade ago. In May 2014, two 12-year-olds, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, lured their friend Peyton Leutner into the woods after a birthday sleepover. Geyser then stabbed Leutner 19 times with a knife she took from home, and the two girls left her there, believing she would die. Miraculously, Leutner survived after crawling out of the woods and seeking help. Wire and Geyser later told investigators that the attack was meant to appease Slender Man, a fictional character from the internet. They believed that by committing this crime, they were preventing Slender Man from harming their families. This case grabbed national attention, with HBO even making a documentary called Beware the Slender Man about it in 2017.
Told me we had to. She said that he'd kill our families. Who's he? A man. He can be anywhere from 6 feet to 14 feet tall. He doesn't have a face. His skin is white.
Now, both girls eventually took plea deals, ending up in mental health institutions instead of traditional prison. Cases like this might explain why some teens seem so careless about committing serious crimes like murder. They might think that if they do something terrible, they'll either get a relatively short sentence, maybe 20 to 30 years in prison or in a mental hospital. To them, it might seem like the consequences aren't as harsh or long-lasting as they are for adults. This kind of thinking can come from a couple of places. For one, they might see how the justice system handles young offenders and think they have a good chance of getting a lighter sentence or being treated more leniently. Plus, with their still developing brains, they might not fully grasp the seriousness of what they're doing. The idea of spending years in prison or being in a mental health facility might not seem as scary to them as it does to older, more experienced adults. Turning back to Amelia's case, it's clear that the tragedy has left her family and the entire community devastated. The heartbreak, especially for her mother, Anna Schuberg, who's 33, is something that will linger for a long time. Anna has been struggling to come to terms with this unimaginable loss. She told local media, "I can't believe she's gone. Every time the phone rings, I still check to see if it's her calling. I'm in complete denial." At the time, the case was still unfolding, and the family was waiting for DNA tests and dental records to officially confirm Amelia's identity, even though the police had already identified her body. Anna vividly recalls the moment when the police, accompanied by a priest, came to deliver the heartbreaking news. "I told them they couldn't tell me anything more because I've already lost my parents," she said, still grappling with disbelief. Anna can't make sense of why anyone would want to harm her daughter. She described Amelia as an angel who always stood up for others and wondered if maybe the world just wasn't ready for someone as kind as her. Before the tragedy, Amelia was feeling stressed about an upcoming pajama party. She and her mom had a small argument, but Amelia quickly sent a text apologizing. Her final message read, "Sorry, Mom, for being difficult because I was stressed. I love you. You're my life." Anna and Amelia had recently reconnected after years apart. Just as we mentioned earlier, Amelia had been in foster care since she was 5, and they were just beginning to rebuild their lives together. They had been making plans for their new home, and Anna had even finished building a dressing table for Amelia, who was excitedly picking out new furniture for her room. She was so excited, Anna recalled through tears. And because Amelia had been in foster care, the pajama party was meant to be her first social party. At this point, it might be time to take a closer look at your circle of friends. Sometimes it's better to go solo than to stick around with people who secretly want to see you fail or get jealous of every little win you have. Remember, genuine friends should lift you up, not drag you down. And if you find yourself being that negative friend, take this as a chance to work on yourself and become a better person.
Bring her back. Don't hurt her. Just bring her back. Let her go.
Polly Klaas had a lifelong fear of the dark. She couldn't sleep unless there was a little light on. She was scared of a mysterious boogeyman and of the possibility of being kidnapped. It was something she had discussed often with her parents. Her father would recall with bitter irony how he had assured his daughter that everything would be all right. I would always be there to protect her. One fateful night, her biggest fear turned to reality. In today's case, we will be looking at how a child was abducted from her own home by a criminal who had repeatedly evaded the justice system. This is the landmark case that would change California law forever. Let's take a closer look at what happened to Polly Klaas and how it could have been avoided. It was the beginning of fall in Petaluma, California. Petaluma is a pretty town in Sonoma County. It's about 1 hour north of San Francisco. On Friday, October 1st, 1993, a 12-year-old girl named Polly had 2 of her friends over at her mom's house. They were having a lot of fun that night, and earlier in the evening they just hung out together. They ate some popcorn and watched movies. It was a normal, fun night for the girls. As the night went on, Polly's sister got tired and went to her room to sleep. A little while after that, Polly's mom, Eve, also needed to go to bed. The 3 girls were still wide awake because they were excited about hanging out together. So they went up to Polly's bedroom. They closed the door and kept talking to each other late into the night. At that moment, everything seemed fine. It was just a normal night. But there was something the girls and Polly's family didn't know. Several people were to remember seeing a thickly built, bearded male with bushy gray hair loitering on the sidewalk around Polly's home. He was not doing anything threatening and could have been a vagrant, or perhaps even just a fellow out for a leisurely evening stroll. But he was not. He had a horrifying plan in mind. Polly Hannah Klaas was born on January 3, 1981 in Fairfax, California, to Mark and Eve Klaas. Her parents divorced when she was only 2.5. Mark Klaas was later to remark that the couple had an unsuccessful marriage but a successful divorce, because the 2 remained friends, and while Eve got custody, Mark faithfully visited his only child. Eve and Polly would move around a great deal while she was growing up. That may be one reason that people often described Polly as shy and say she had trouble forming friendships. Although often withdrawn, Polly had a dramatic streak. She very much enjoyed being in school plays and cherished the dream of acting professionally someday. Music was a major interest, and she was active in the school band. She had a good sense of humor and enjoyed dressing up like an old lady and hobbling about with a cane, which she would use to suddenly whack someone on the behind. Polly spent most holidays and weekends with her dad, who ran a Hertz rent-a-car office in San Francisco's Fairmont Hotel. Wherever Polly's family moved, Mark was there. He also worked as a teacher's aide in some of Polly's schools. Her grandfather, Joe Klaas, said they had an incredible relationship and remembered that if anyone made a joke about Mark, she would jump to his defense. Overall, Polly was a beautiful young girl who was looking forward to an amazing life. Before that terrible night in 1993, Davis had already established himself as a lifelong criminal. Richard Allen Davis was born on June 2nd, 1945, as the third of 5 children. His early life has been described as disadvantaged. When Davis was only 3 years old, he and his brothers were playing with matches, so their mother held each boy's hand to a hot stove to punish them for it. She thought this would stop them from playing with fire again, but this kind of punishment doesn't work. Instead, it traumatized Davis and added to his sadistic tendencies later on. His father was equally awful and described as unloving. He was mentally unstable and suffered from hallucinations. He was reported to have taken a gun outside the home and shot at mirages. Robert would also beat Richard, breaking his jaw on one occasion and pushing him through an interior wall on another, and was known to be harsh with the others. He witnessed many violent fights between his parents, who finally divorced when Davis was 11. But this only marked the beginning of his troubling behavior. When he was 12, he got in trouble for breaking into places. This happened again when he was 15. At 17, he got caught stealing a motorcycle. The judge gave him a choice: join the Army or go to the California Youth Authority. Davis chose the Army, but he only stayed for 13 months before they told him to leave. Then, in 1973, an incredibly suspicious death was connected to Davis. He went to a party at the home of 18-year-old Marlene Voris. That same night, she was found dead of a gunshot wound, and there were 7 suicide notes found at the scene. The police concluded that she committed suicide, but friends of Marlene believe Davis murdered her. He didn't go to jail for that, but he did go to jail for something else. He kidnapped a woman named Frances Mays, using a knife to make her get into his car. He drove her to a remote location, but Frances somehow grabbed the knife and ran out of the car to escape. After that, Davis kept going in and out of jail. He would break into places, sell things he stole, and get arrested, but he always got out after a short time. It was a depraved cycle. Whenever he got out, he'd always go right back to living a life of crime. While in state prison, Davis told a psychiatrist that stealing made him feel better. In his own words, it relieved the tensions built up inside him. The psychiatrist diagnosed Davis with an assortment of personality disorders, including avoidant personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and schizoid personality disorder. It was concluded that he couldn't control himself and was dangerous to other people. But somehow, Davis managed to stay out of trouble. In 1982, he got out of prison again and went right back to robbing and hurting people. During this time, he met a woman named Sue Edwards, who became his actual partner in crime. In 1984, Davis and Sue went to a woman's house in Redwood City, California, who they knew had some money. The woman's name was Selena Varich, and Sue knew her through her sister. When they got to Selena's house, they hurt her badly and said they would kill her, her father, and her daughter if she didn't give them $6,000. At first, Selena said no, so they hit her on the head with a gun, causing her to splatter blood. This led to a huge cut that required 5 stitches later. While she was bleeding profusely, Davis and Sue made her wash her hair. Then they took her to the bank to get the money they wanted. Selena said Davis looked evil. His eyes looked demonic. He seemed happy about hurting her. Apparently, Selena's bruises and fear were not enough to alarm bank personnel. as the transaction took place smoothly. Selena turned the cash over to Sue, who then met up with Davis, and the two happily took off. Not long after this, a police officer pulled over Davis because his truck had a broken light. When he ran a check, the officer found warrants for their crimes against Selena, so the couple was arrested. This time he went to jail for 8 years, while Sue went to jail for a mere 6 months because she lacked a criminal record. In July of 1993, Davis got out of jail again. Just 3 months later, he went to Petaluma. That's when he broke into Polly's home. Polly and her two friends were in her bedroom, just hanging out, completely clueless to the fact that Davis was right outside. Now, we don't know the exact reason why he chose to break into Polly's home. Maybe Davis just wanted to steal things from the house, but didn't know Polly and her friends were there. Davis wasn't afraid of getting in trouble with the police either. Remember, he would commit crimes, go to jail, get out, and then commit more crimes. This behavior had just become a way of life for him. Davis got into the house through a window that wasn't locked. Once he was inside, he heard the 3 girls talking and laughing. But before he went to the girls' room, he took a big knife from the kitchen, which shows that he kidnapped Polly on some criminal whim instead of planning it. Davis walked quietly up to Polly's bedroom door and opened it. The 3 young girls were terrified when they saw him, so Davis ordered, "Don't scream or I'll cut your throats." He said if they did what he said, everything would be okay. He was just looking for money and wasn't there to hurt them. Polly offered him a box with $50 in cash. He refused it and told the 3 girls to lie down on the floor. He tied up Polly and her friends with white rope before putting pillowcases over 2 of the girls' heads. He told them he would bring Polly back after he finished stealing valuable things from the house. Polly begged him, "Please don't hurt my mom and sister." Her friends remember the terror in her voice. Then he made them count to 1,000, so they started counting. After a few minutes, they stopped counting so they could listen. The house was quiet. They couldn't hear any footsteps or other noises. Completely panicked, the girls struggled out of their bonds and rushed to Eve's room to tell her what happened. Still groggy from her sleep, Eve thought they were playing a prank on her. The idea was too strange and terrifying. About 30 minutes after Davis broke into Polly's bedroom, Polly's mother called 911 for help. When she talked to the person on the phone, she said, "Apparently, a man just broke into our house and took my daughter." Eve was, understandably, in total disbelief.
Begging for her return. If you're the man who has Polly, please.
After Eve called for help, the police sent out a message to look for a missing girl and the man who took her. This message went to all of Sonoma County, but there was a problem with how they sent the message. The message went out on Channel 1 of the police radios. Only the sheriffs of each town in the county used Channel 1. The sheriffs were supposed to tell their police officers about the message, but the police officers who were driving around used Channel 3 to talk to each other. This is important to remember. If 2 police officers had gotten the message just 1.5 hours after it was sent out, they might have caught Davis that very night. They might have found Polly before it was too late. Around midnight, something happened about 20 miles north of Polly's home. This was in a place called Santa Rosa. A babysitter was leaving the house where she worked. She saw a car stuck in a ditch. The car was on a long private driveway where not many people go, so this seemed strange to her. The babysitter went to a gas station nearby. She called Dana Jaffe, the woman who owned the house where she was babysitting. She told Dana about the car, which Dana thought was strange and concerning too, especially since it was the middle of the night. Dana was a single mom who worked as a cook. She had the babysitter watching her daughter while she was at work, and she didn't want to deal with whatever was happening. She was tired after working all night, so she got in her car with her daughter, and they left the house in case the person in the ditch turned out to be dangerous. Dana's gut feeling was right. The person in the ditch was Davis, and he did want to do horrible things that night. As Dana drove away, she actually drove past Davis. She looked right at him. She saw his eyes and thought they looked cold and terrifying. They were the same kind of eyes that Selena, one of Davis's earlier victims, had described years ago. Dana drove to the same gas station where her babysitter was. From there, she called 911 and asked the police to go check on her house. Years later, many realized that this was the pivotal moment where Davis came extremely close to being exposed. 2 police officers came to Dana's house soon after she called. They went up to the car and questioned Davis, who told them he had swerved to avoid hitting a deer. That's why he ended up in the ditch on the driveway. Remember, these officers didn't know about the message to look for Polly. They did a routine check for his driver's license and his car's license plate number. They saw that he had a criminal record, but there were no current arrest orders for him. But since he had just gotten out of prison 3 months ago, the officers didn't fully believe Davis's story about the deer. They thought he might have been planning to rob Dana's house. One thing the officers could never have imagined was the fact that he had kidnapped a 12-year-old girl just a couple of hours earlier. The officers rightly didn't want to let Davis go, so they wanted Dana to make a citizen's arrest. Under California law against trespassers, Dana has the right to go up to Davis and tell him, "I arrest you," while the officers are present. Then the officers could take Davis in and look into things more. But Dana didn't want to do this. She just wanted to go to bed and not make a big deal about it. So the officers called for a tow truck to get Davis's car out of the ditch. While they waited, they looked inside his car. It was messy, but they didn't see anything that looked really wrong. They did see an open can of beer. Davis said he opened the beer after he got stuck, since he wasn't driving when the police got there. They believed him. They just made him pour out the beer before he started driving again. The tow truck pulled Davis's car out of the ditch. Davis thanked the officers for helping him. Then he got in his car and followed them back to Highway 101. After that, Davis drove away. This turned out to be extremely tragic. It made the search for Polly much harder. The officers had the man who took Polly right there, just hours after he took her. We don't know if Polly was still alive somewhere at that time. But because the officers didn't know about the message to look for Polly, Davis got away again. The news about Polly being taken from her home during a sleepover caused an uproar in the country.
It's the 6th day, and I'm exhausted. We will never stop. We will never stop. We will never close until we have accomplished our mission and we get my little girl back.
Just 6 months before this happened, the internet had become more accessible to the public. Polly's missing person poster was the first one ever to be shared on the internet. Over the next 2 months, millions of posters with Polly's picture were sent all around the world. Polly's picture was even on the cover of People magazine. Popular TV shows like ABC's 2020 and America's Most Wanted talked about what was happening in the search for Polly. Actress Winona Ryder, who grew up in Petaluma, the same town where Polly lived, offered $200,000 to anyone who could bring Polly back safely. More than 60,000 people called the police about tips related to Polly, and the police looked into more than 12,000 of these tips. It would have been hard to find anyone in America who didn't know that Polly was missing. If you're old enough, you might even remember hearing about Polly's story yourself when it was happening. 2 months after Davis got stuck in Dana Jaffe's driveway, something important happened. It was November 27th. Dana was walking around her property where she had some trees cut down recently and wanted to see how it looked. While she was walking, Dana saw something red in the mud. When she looked closer, she saw it was a dirty pair of red leggings. Next to the leggings, there was a child's black sweatshirt. There were also some white ropes that had been cut. Dana had been hearing a lot about Polly's case on the news. She suddenly remembered the night she saw Davis on her driveway and had a chilling realization. She had unknowingly let a child killer get away. The police came and put tape around the area. Along with the clothes and ropes, they also found a used condom and its wrapper nearby. One of the police officers immediately recognized that the ropes looked like the ones used to tie up Polly's friends. Polly's family also confirmed the clothes belonged to her. Back in Polly's bedroom, the police had found a handprint on the bedpost. They knew it wasn't from Polly's family or friends. Now they hoped it might be from Davis, so they asked many police stations if they had Davis's handprint. Luckily, one of them did. The police arrested Davis 2 days later. They asked him questions and told him about the matching handprint. When they asked if he took Polly, he nodded yes. When they asked if Polly was alive, he shook his head no. Davis agreed to show the police where he left Polly. He took them to a place in the woods near Highway 101. Polly's body was hidden under a piece of wood in a shallow hole. The police think that on the night Davis's car got stuck, he had hidden Polly's body in some bushes nearby. The police officers who saw Davis that night remembered that he was sweating a lot, even though it wasn't very warm. He also had small sticks and dirt on his clothes and in his hair. After the police helped Davis get his car unstuck and he drove away, he must have gone back to get Polly's body. Then he took her to the place in the woods where he buried her. Polly's death led to big changes in how police work and how criminals are punished across the country. In 1994, California made a new law called 3 Strikes and You're Out. The law was meant to stop people like Davis, who were career criminals, from getting out of jail and hurting more people. The 3 Strikes law said that if someone did 3 serious crimes, they would go to jail for a very long time. People hoped this would keep dangerous people off the streets. Maybe even more important than the new law, the police changed how they share information. Remember how the message about Polly didn't get to all the police officers? The California Highway Patrol fixed this problem. Now, when there's an important message about a crime, it goes to every single police channel. This means all police officers get the information right away. When Davis went to court, the trial didn't take very long. This was because of Davis's criminal history. There was a lot of evidence showing he had taken Polly, and he had admitted to doing it. During the trial, Davis said some hurtful things that weren't true to hurt Polly's family. He claimed that Polly had said to him, "Just don't do me like my dad," right before he killed her. This enraged Polly's father, who attempted to lunge at Davis in court before he was restrained. Because of what Davis did to Polly and how he acted in court, the judge said he deserved the death penalty. Mr. Davis, this is always a traumatic and emotional decision for a judge. You made it very easy today by your conduct. Right now, Davis is 70 years old in San Quentin State Prison, waiting for the death penalty. There are 2 groups named after Polly, the Polly Class Foundation and the Class Kids Foundation. These groups work to raise awareness about child kidnappings and demand stronger punishments for those who hurt children. What did you think about today's case? Was Polly Class kidnapping and murder avoidable?
Forsyth County 911.
Hi, yes, I need an ambulance.
Hey, have y'all checked to see if she's breathing?
She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing.
The deceased woman mentioned in this 911 call is Tamla Horsford, a 40-year-old mother of 5. Forsyth County, Georgia is a place haunted by its racist past. When Tamla, the only black woman at an all-white adult sleepover, was found dead, the inconsistencies in the case confused the entire nation. We began seeing corruption, cover-ups, contradicting stories, and evidence that was never taken into account. Today, her grieving family still searches for answers. Was Tamla's death a terrible accident or something far more sinister? Today's case is a mystery that refuses to be buried. Let's get started and see why this case still interests so many people. Tamla George Horsford was born on October 10, 1978, in Kingstown, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Everybody who knew her called her Tam for short. When she was 11 years old, her family moved to the Bronx, New York. But later in life, Tamla moved to Florida. There she met and married a man named Leander Horsford. Leander already had a daughter when they met. But together Tamla and Leander had 5 more children, all boys. The people around her said that Tamla was a great mom and wife. She had a fun personality, loved to dance, and was very lively. You could often see her cheering for her boys at their football games with a bullhorn, and her kids could always count on her to be there for them. In 2013, Tamla and her family moved to Cumming, Georgia. Leander's job was the reason for the move. The county they moved to, Forsyth County, had a troubled history with race relations. Back in 1912, over 1,000 black residents were forcefully expelled from the town. Today, Forsyth County is 96% white, and it is still considered by some to be a sundown town. That is, a white community that intentionally prevents black people and other minorities from residing there. On November 3, 2018, Tamla made dinner for her husband and children. After dinner, she left to go to a birthday party for her new friend, Jean Myers. Jean invited a group of moms she knew from the Youth Football League, and the plan was for everyone to spend the night so no one would drive home after drinking. Keep in mind that Tamla knew some of the women at the party, but not very well, so she wasn't entirely sure about going there at first. She barely even knew Jean, but she decided to go anyway, only because she didn't want to let Jean down. Little did Tamla know, this decision would lead to her demise. Tamla arrived at the party around 8:30 p.m. She brought a small overnight bag and a bottle of tequila as a gift for Jean, but it turned out that Jean didn't like tequila and didn't want the bottle. None of the other women at the party wanted any tequila either, so Tamla ended up drinking the tequila herself while the other women had different drinks. Now, the party was supposed to be just for women, but Jean's boyfriend, Jose Barrera, and another woman's husband, Tom Smith, decided to stay too. While the women drank, talked, and watched the LSU-Alabama football game upstairs in the living room, Jose and the other husband watched football in Jean's basement. So, in total, there were 9 women and 2 men at the party, and 8 of these people planned to spend the night. Tamla was the only smoker at the party, so she often went outside to the porch to have a cigarette. She also smoked some marijuana that night. The host, Jean, teased her about this and said Tamla was like a female Bob Marley. She also reminded Tamla that her boyfriend, Jose, worked for the court and didn't like marijuana use. 2 women left the party at 10:30 p.m. because they didn't have overnight babysitters. Around midnight, the rest of the group started playing a game called Cards Against Humanity in the living room. They played for about an hour because it was already very late. After the game, everyone started cleaning up and getting ready for bed. Around this time, Tamla video called her husband and older daughter. This would be the last time she ever spoke to her family. For some reason, she also decided she wanted to drive home. She thought she hadn't drank much and didn't want to stay overnight anymore. We don't know the exact reason why she changed her mind. The other women at the party tried to convince her to stay because they didn't want her to drive after drinking, so Tamla stayed over to calm everyone's nerves. By 1:30 in the morning, most people had gone to bed. The party host, Jean, and her boyfriend, Jose, also went to bed around this time. When they left, Tamla was still in the kitchen, eating a bowl of gumbo, and she told them she was going to have another cigarette outside. The next morning, Madeline Lombardi, Jean's aunt, who also lived there, looked out into the backyard while making her coffee, when she saw something deeply upsetting. Tamla was lying face down in the grass under the deck. Madeline ran upstairs to tell Jean and Jose what she had seen, but before she did that, she decided to pray next to Tamla's body before trying to help Tamla or call for emergency help. At 8:59 a.m., someone finally called 911.
Okay, what's going on?
We had people over last night. We were drinking. Most of us went to bed. One of them stayed on the balcony. She was drinking, and we just went outside, and she's laying face down in the backyard.
Many people have noted the calm demeanor in the calls. On the 911 call, you can hear Jose telling the operator that he sees a small cut on Tamla's wrist. He said he doesn't know if Tamla did this to herself or if someone else did it.
I'm completely not sure.
Okay, and that's the only blood that you would see?
That's what I can see without moving her over. I haven't seen her face.
Do you know if she was suicidal at all?
I have no clue. I've met her one other time. Like my girlfriend said, people were over last night. She was her birthday party. We're not the woman that we believe to be deceased, but it's my girlfriend's birthday party. Instead of having everybody go out, she had everyone stay in. And she was the last one I saw before everybody was typically put off to bed. And she was the last one in the kitchen. She was just either waiting around for a ride or waiting until the morning.
Okay. How far is the where she would have fell from? How far is the deck from the ground?
I would probably say maybe 20 feet.
Okay.
20 feet from where your feet would be on the railing. The railing itself is maybe 3.5, 4 feet.
Okay.
The police arrived at Jean's house at 9:07 a.m., but when they got there, they said Tamla was already dead. The police then called everyone who had been at the party the night before. In total, they talked to 30 people. Doctors did an autopsy on Tamla's body, and they found that Tamla had several strange injuries from being hit or falling. They also found that she had a lot of alcohol in her blood. Her blood alcohol level was .238, which is almost 3 times the legal limit allowed for driving. But even before the autopsy was concluded, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office started thinking Tamla's death was just an accident. They thought she might have fallen from the outdoor deck on the second floor of the house. At first, the police told Tamla's husband, Leander, that Tamla had tripped over some garden edging and fallen on the ground, leading to her death. Jean's aunt, who lives in the house, said she had stumbled over this edging before as well. Not only that, but the police also thought that because Tamla had been drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana, she might have been confused or dizzy. All of these factors would make it more likely for her to fall. The police think Tamla died around 1:57 in the morning. That's when the security system showed that the back door was opened and never closed again. On February 20th, 2019, the police officially closed the case. They said Tamla's death was an accident. But there are still many questions about what really happened to Tamla that night. The officials said that Tamla's injuries didn't look like someone had hurt her on purpose. They said, "It was a party. People were drinking. She was drinking. Most people at the party had gone to bed by then, and she was alone on the deck." But Tamla's husband didn't believe this. He said Tamla could drink half a bottle of tequila and still dance in her high heels, so there was no way she was so drunk that she accidentally fell off the porch. About 2 weeks after Tamla died, another party guest named Stacy Smith talked to the police. She also didn't think Tamla could have fallen off the deck by accident. Stacy said she had been on that deck many times before, and even tried to test if someone who was drunk could lean over the railing to throw up and fall. But no matter how she tried, she couldn't figure out how Tamla could have gone over the railing. Stacy also said that Tamla wasn't acting very drunk or sick that night, even though the tests showed she had a lot of alcohol in her blood. Photos and videos from the party show Tamla smiling and happy. Even though she was drinking tequila, she didn't seem very drunk in the pictures, videos, or what other people remembered. At first, Jean, who owned the house, was so sure that Tamla didn't fall from the balcony that she posted about it on social media. But this changed when Tamla's friend, Michelle Graves, started posting on social media too. Michelle said she thought people at the party knew more than they were telling because things about Tamla's death just didn't make sense. Michelle told the media, "They're totally lying. They're not off the hook because this was not an accident." A few weeks later, some of the people who were at the party, including Jean, sued Michelle. They said Michelle had hurt their reputations with 13 Facebook posts. They claimed these posts falsely accused them of killing Tamla or helping to cover it up. But Michelle said she only posted facts that she had checked in Tamla's case file. When Tamla was found, Jean and Jose said she was lying face down with her arms by her sides and her palms facing up. But when the first responders arrived, Tamla's position was different. Her left arm was stretched out and bent at the elbow, with her fist closed tight. Her face wasn't turned to either side. It looked like she had fallen straight forward onto the ground. This position seemed very unnatural. Even the police officers who came to the scene were confused about how Tamla's body was positioned. One officer said, "If you try to catch yourself with your left hand and there's nothing to grab, you'd spin around, you know. It doesn't make sense. It's like she fell straight down." People also noticed several cuts and scrapes on Tamla's hands and arms. Some wondered if these might be defensive wounds, which could mean Tamla had been in a fight before she went over the balcony. Jose told an investigator on November 7th that he had checked Tamla for a pulse, which might explain why her arm was moved. But later, when talking to a special agent, Jose said this wasn't true. When the agent mentioned the earlier report, Jose called it complete bullshit and said he didn't move her arm or check for a pulse. Jose did tell the police that he found an unlit cigarette and a lighter on the deck before he saw Tamla's body. But because the police thought Tamla's death was just an accident, they didn't check these items for fingerprints. They also didn't protect the area where Tamla was found, which means important evidence might have been lost or changed. In the first 911 call, Jose had said there were security cameras pointed at the backyard, but it turned out all the cameras had dead batteries and hadn't recorded anything. This detail seemed a little too convenient to some people. Tamla's family and friends had other questions too. They wondered why nobody tried to do CPR on Tamla when she was found. Even the police didn't try to help her. They told the ambulance not to come, and Tamla was just put in a body bag and taken away. It seemed like no one made any sort of last-ditch effort to try to save Tamla's life. Many people wondered if Tamla's race played a role in her death. She was the only black woman at a party full of white women. Some thought that if the situation had been reversed, if one white woman had died at a party with mostly black women, the police would have treated it as a crime scene right away. As we've mentioned before, the county where this happened, Forsyth County, has a bad history of racism. Fortunately, Tamla's case became famous across the country, and many people demanded justice for her. Many big celebrities, including 50 Cent and T.I., said they didn't think Tamla's death was just an accident. It wasn't until over 600,000 people signed a petition that Sheriff Freeman asked the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to look at Tamla's case again in July 2020. The police found more records of doors opening and closing around the time they think Tamla died. The garage door opened at 1:40 a.m. and wasn't closed until the next morning. The last person who said they saw Tamla alive, Bridget Fuller, told police that she and Tamla walked to the front door together when Bridget's husband came to pick her up. Bridget said she hugged Tamla before leaving. This matches a door chime at 1:47 a.m. But Bridget's husband said he only saw his wife at the door, not Tamla. All these things that didn't add up made people very suspicious. In December 2018, Jose was fired from his job as a pretrial officer. This was because he used his job to look at documents about Tamla's death that he wasn't supposed to see. People also said he leaked confidential information about her case. But Jose said he didn't do anything illegal and that all the information he looked at was public. Furthermore, when Tamla's body was sent for an autopsy, only 5 photos were taken. This is very unusual for a death investigation. Normally, many more photos would be taken, especially with the kind of injuries Tamla had. Tamla's father thought this was because the police were focusing on investigating Tamla herself, not looking for someone who might have hurt her. There were many questions that didn't make sense. How could Tamla, who had a lot of alcohol in her system, still seem in control, but somehow fall over a 14-foot railing? Why didn't anyone in the house hear her fall or scream? What happened when the door was opened just before 2 a.m., and why wasn't it closed until the next morning? For over a year, Tamla's family fought to have her case looked at again. They didn't believe her death was an accident. They also asked for a second autopsy.
We were all just drinking, and we played cards against humanity.
But her family insists that narrative doesn't solve the puzzle.
You get all this information, and you go, wait, nothing makes sense here.
Ralph Fernandez, the attorney for Tamla's husband, says he's gone through the evidence, every interview, document, and scene photo. So has Tamla's father and friends like Michelle Graves.
Why not just let this go? I cannot let this go because I know that what they said did not happen to her.
In June 2020, the GBI finally conducted a second autopsy. They found that Tamla had injuries to her head, neck, body, and limbs. These included scrapes on her face, 4 types of bleeding in her skull and brain, her right wrist was out of place, cuts on her arms and legs, a broken neck, and a tear in the right side of her heart. The GBI also found that Tamla had a lot of alcohol in her blood, just like the first autopsy showed. But they also found Xanax in her system, and no one knew how it got there. Tamla's family hired another medical expert for a third opinion. This expert said that Tamla's wrist wasn't just out of place, but had a compound fracture, meaning the bone was sticking out through the skin.
I know this was a homicide. The problem is I can't pin it on anybody because I don't have a badge and I don't have a gun.
This is important because there wasn't much blood found where Tamla was discovered. This makes people wonder where and how she got this injury. The little blood that was found on Tamla's sleeve was on the opposite side of her injury and seemed to have happened after she died. Interestingly, no medical examiner found any big injuries to Tamla's skull and bones. The fact that there was no bruising on the broken bones in her skull makes people question whether she really died from falling from the second floor. When the police talked to everyone who was at the party, they got photos and videos from their phones. But they didn't take the phones or download all the data. They also didn't legally request to look at the partygoers' phones for evidence. This didn't happen until the GBI got involved. By then, at least 2 people had new phones, and detectives found out that some text messages and pictures on some of the phones had been deleted. During their investigation, the GBI found what seemed to be lies from some people who were at the party. One woman, Bridget Fuller, who had severe anxiety, told police her medication made it impossible for her to lie. This claim is unusual, as there's no known medication that prevents lying. Bridget said she always wore a necklace with her Xanax because she depended on it so much. She told investigators she knew it was a controlled substance and hadn't shared it. But when the GBI looked at everyone's phone messages, they found this wasn't true. Bridget had shared some kind of medication with a few people before the party, and she gave some women Xanax at the party. When asked about this, Bridget admitted it was true, but said she didn't give any to Tamla because she didn't know her well. However, Tamla had Xanax in her system, and no one knew why. It's worth noting that Bridget didn't seem to like Tamla much, and it appeared none of the women really did. One of the main detectives on Tamla's case, Michael Christian, left the police department during an internal investigation. The investigation found he had broken his oath of office and neglected his duty. The GBI talked to 2 women who said Michael Christian had told them details about Tamla's case. One ex-girlfriend said he shared Tamla's toxicology report with her and thought Tamla's body had been moved. Another woman said Michael sent her a photo of Tamla's body at the scene. This woman said Michael was so obsessed with the case that he would have panic attacks about it. According to the ex-girlfriend, Michael thought Tamla's death was an accident, but didn't think she fell from a 14-foot balcony. She also said Michael told her he found calls between Jose Barrera and the lead investigator, Andy Kalin, before the 911 call, and he thought maybe Andy helped the partygoers come up with a story. But Jose and Andy both said this wasn't true. The GBI got 3 screenshots of Snapchat messages Michael sent to a girlfriend. In one message sent the day Tamla was found dead, he seemed to be joking about talking to Tamla's husband. The message was very insensitive, making light of Tamla's death and her children's loss. Michael even called Tamla the porch lady at one point. In another message, Michael made disturbing jokes about racism and murder cover-ups. The Horsford family's lawyer thinks part of this message might be referring to Tamla's friend, Michelle Graves. When the GBI asked Michael about these messages, he admitted sending them, but said they were sarcasm and in bad taste. He denied ever sending photos of the crime scene. A friend of Tamla's husband, Stephen Reynolds, told police he was worried Tamla's death might have been sexually motivated. He claimed that 2 couples at the party were swingers and thought someone might have tried to initiate something sexual with Tamla. However, this idea wasn't mentioned anywhere else in the investigation, including in interviews with the couples Stephen named. Instead, the GBI seemed to focus a lot on Tamla's husband, Leander. They searched his phone and social media accounts but didn't find anything suspicious. On July 28, 2021, the GBI finished their investigation. They decided not to pursue any criminal charges. This means Tamla's death is still officially considered an accident, and no one has been arrested or charged. The most heartbreaking part of this story comes from Leander's experience at the funeral home. When he went to see Tamla before the funeral, he couldn't even recognize her. Here's what he said. "When I went into the funeral home, I probably scared everyone because I yelled, 'What the fuck?' as loud as I could. I saw my wife looking like she had black shoe polish all over her face. I flipped out and told them to take it off. They said they had to cover up the bruising, but you don't cover bruising with black shoe polish. My wife is my color, but her skin was so dark, like blackface. I was really angry and was going to close the casket for the viewing. Leander's sons wanted to see their mother, but he was worried about how it would affect them. His oldest son insisted, so Leander let him come in. Leander said, "We both just stood there and looked at her. Neither of us cried because it didn't look anything like her." He described how Tamla's wrist was bent oddly, and you could see where the bone had stuck out. When his son came in, the boy said, "Dad, that doesn't look like an accident." This made Leander decide to leave the casket open, saying, "If a 12-year-old can walk up and say it doesn't look like an accident, leave the casket open." Tamla Horsford's funeral was held at McDonald and Son Funeral Home in Cumming, Georgia on Friday, November 9th, 2018. What do you think? Was Tamla's death an accident, or was there something suspicious going on? Do you think there's a massive cover-up involved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.